specifically focused on loops, the for loop, and on lists. Lists you may have seen in like Java, they're like arrays, but they're more like array lists as a special kind of data structure. We build on a lot of similar ideas we've seen last time I talked with you about this. Loops like while loops, and then lots of things that you're manipulating with strings that comes into play, but in a little different way. The differences are kind of subtle, and you'll see and apply some of those ideas. So where are we starting? Roughly here. Lists. Okay, lists are very much like a string. It's an array of characters, and you can sequence them. You can add things to them. It's nice. There's some kind of order to it. Defining them, they look like such with square brackets, just like with what is it? Like in JavaScript, we use square brackets to define an array. The weird part is, notice here in this slide, they all have the same data type. Like all these are numbers, all these things are words. But in Python, you can very easily combine different types into the same list. Notice you have a word, you have a decimal, you have a number, and then you even have a list inside a list. Okay, 10, comma 20. That's weird, okay? And in most other languages, you're not able to do so. Python lets you like be flexible with these kinds of things. All right. So that is the idea. You'll see this word a lot, nested. It just means thing inside a thing. In this case, it's a list inside a list. Vocabulary word. Sometimes they're called 2D arrays. Yes, so some more examples. You're defining these lists. Now you're storing them to variables, cheeses, numbers, and the empty list. Be careful with the empty list. That's what usually will trigger your mistake on coding bat. I think in each of the test cases, I entered in how you should handle the empty list. All right, so on to some more interesting things. This is the part where lists are just like arrays, access. So you want to use or locate a very specific number inside this list. This is the first number of 42. Down here, it's the second number of 123. Notice, just like with arrays, the index starts at 0. So when you click, when you use the first thing, that's going to be 123. This position is then going to get overwritten with the value of 5. That's why when you ask Python, hey, what's in this list called numbers, it goes 42 and then 5. That's the bracket operator, nothing new there. And you can read these slides for other stuff. Okay? Some other things that you will be aware of when using the square brackets to access things. The number that's inside the square brackets has to be an integer. That means no decimal places. If you do 1.0, it's going to give you an error. And if you try to read or write anything, if you try to access any element in there, if it doesn't exist in your list, if it's beyond, like inside this cheeses example, if you try to access 0, position 3, notice that doesn't exist inside this list, you're going to get an index error, just like array out of bound or index out of bound, as you've seen with many of your programming assignments. The new part is negative values. That goes backwards counting. So -1 gives you Gouda. Right? So that's new to Python, and I think some other languages often don't handle that. They only accept non-negative integers as their indices. Okay? And then down here, the in operator is more useful than you would think. It's not just for loops. For example, for like x in like range 1 through 10. The in operator checks to see if this specific word is inside your list. So it's like a comparison operator amongst other stuff. How do I pronounce this, Cheej? Edam?
What?
Edam? Edam?
Adam?
Edam? Edam is a cheese. Okay, so it's in the list, which is why you return true, and then brie you get false. Okay, because that is not a cheese inside the list. And that should be helpful in one of your... No, I chopped that one off in your coding bat practice. Yes, I don't think it's cheese eye.
Cheese eye.
Yeah, it's not like,
I don't know. I just think there's many
cheeses.
I think it's many types of cheese.
Many types. Okay, so yes, the wonderful thing about being a computer scientist is you don't have to know how to spell things, right? You just have to be consistent in how you spell things. So your variable can be wrong, but it's throughout your program, right? Like I always spell example X maple, but as long as it's consistent through my program knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Less so other people. Here are 3 for loops, okay? Why would you travel or use these 3 different kinds of for loops? Notice the patterns that are present, right? Something you can think about. If you're watching the video, you will pause, okay, and think about it. And then I'll go through each of the slides and walk through why you would use each of these lists. Now in Python, it kind of cheats. If you're familiar with Java, this is the for each loop. This is how it works. For cheese in cheeses, print cheese. Cheese on the left-hand side, this part over here, takes on the value of each cheeses. So in each of these cases, if we follow with this current example over here, it goes cheddar, it takes on the value cheddar. Notice it's not the index. It takes on the value edam, and then takes on the value gouda. Okay? So this is good if you want to just print out everything or you want to do something special, but you hit every single one. Okay? And then the second one, it's something more subtle. This is the kind of loop you'll see more often. You're using the indices. It matters where and what position you're in inside your loop. And you want to do something based on that. Here it has an example. Each value is then being doubled versus the first one, it's just being printed. Notice you don't have access to the index. Think about that like an address. You have to access that using the square bracket operators. Okay? This second loop variation is something way more common. Notice it also uses 2 functions to help you out, range, which I quizzed you on a lot for this very reason. And then len is a useful one. It checks the length of your list, of your string, of your array. That's super useful. And then the last one, okay, it's pretty much useless. Some more notes on that second loop. The last loop over here, you rarely will come across, but often when you're programming, if you're working in lists of lists, you may have to deal with the empty list, and in this case, just know that it gets skipped over. X takes on the value nothing, so you're never going to print anything down here. And then the other things that I haven't typed in quite yet, concatenation. Let's say you had a list like A, B, and C. Yeah, A, C, and B. So if you add these 2 things together, right, you type this into Python, use the plus operator, and then D, E, and F, you get an end result, right? So I think it has 3 things. If I type this into Python, it's going to return A, comma, B, comma, C, commas D, E, and F, right? It works exactly as strings do. And then the fancy word for that is called concatenation, just putting things together. I'll pull up more examples afterwards. Repeating, just like with strings, if you had the character like A and you multiply that by 9, you're going to see A, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? Yes, this is the correct number of A's.
That's the sound you make
Nope.
when the doctor asks you to open your mouth.
Yes, exactly. If you ever have to go there. So when you go for lists of things, A, B, and C, and then you multiply that by 9, you should get the singular list with those 3 elements repeated again and again. So it's as if I got this copy and paste operator and did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Something like that.
You say that and you go to wash your hands.
Slicing, okay? Just like with strings, if you had the string banana, right? And this is saved in the word fruit. Slicing just means using, that's okay. As long as I'm consistent, then it is fine. Okay? So 1, 2, 4, yes? So that should return 1, 2, 3 things. Notice it's exclusive of the last argument, and you should begin including the first one. So with an array, just like with the characters, that part is the same. Again, you have like A, B, C, and D, and then you go, let's say this is X equals this. So when you go use the slicing, which is the colon, okay, and you go 1 through 4,
And then you get
0,
BC.
1, 2, 3, yeah, and then that's not going to be okay. Wait, 4. Yeah, 4 is going to be fine. 0, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so B, C, D. So you type this in, 1, 2, 3. Type this in, 1, 2, 3. And then you return 1, 2, 3, B, comma, C, comma, D. Slicing comes in useful in your coding bat problems. You will definitely utilize it. And here's the part where it's different and sometimes more useful compared to arrays. Because arrays, imagine like you have to add something at the end. You have to go to that specific position, go one more. Sometimes it gets tedious. Python, with its lists, kind of makes that a lot easier. So append, add something at the very end. Let's say you had that list, AB. You can do x.append, and then it'll tack on the letter C. Make sure you have the quotation marks, otherwise it thinks it's a variable. And when you do that, and you type in x, you should see the list A, comma, C, comma, C.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, that's neat.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah, you definitely should. Extending should be combining two lists. My memory gets a bit fuzzy for that. I don't have my notes in front of me. D, E, F, okay, these three letters. I think the difference here is when you use extend, you may have to give it another list, but my memory is a bit fuzzy on this. A, B, and C. So one is like an element versus two lists being combined together. And then you print X, you should get D, A, B, C. So that's what I forgot. Extending, I think, should be, well, we can look it up.
Append is cooler.
Yeah, append is like element by element. You do one thing at a time, versus extend should be putting two things together. Now, I have to look up and actually test to see what the difference is. I have to get back to you on that. This is where I stopped with my slides, but I'll go off what I remember. Okay, so this one, I need to comment more on this. How is this different than append? And then sort is neat. If you sorted these, it'll go in alphabetical order, it'll go in ASCII order or numeric order. These three things, pop, delete, and remove, are all slightly different, and you will definitely use DEL, delete, in your last coding that problem. I think I'll just pause there. What's coming up after I fill in the rest of these slides? Map, filter, and reduce is going to be something really powerful. It's going to be, the example I want to eventually build is based on your image processing lab assignment that you did the other week. We're going to try to do that in a couple lines of code, just using functions. And then later, I'll give some more practice quiz questions on typical mistakes that you will make while using lists for the first time. And just remember that quiz for both classes is moved to, what's the following Friday? The 20th? March 20th. So right before the week-long, no, we still got another week after that. Yeah, 23rd to 27th, I think, is still in school. Spring break is the last week of March.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, so no quiz this Friday, unless you really want it to be then. And that concludes this lecture. You'll get one more tomorrow, and work on your short list practice assignment.